Welcome to A Mile Deep with me, Benjamin Owen, and today we are going a mile deep with Joel Stone from Codebreak. Honestly, excited about this. Actually, just been talking to him before the podcast kicked off, and he shared with me something we're gonna be giving you later on in the podcast about what really served him in his life and his business. But Joel, welcome to the podcast. We're going a mile deep today, brother.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I actually contacted Joel because I put in a group about wanting to go from organic marketing. I've been an organic marketer for pretty much my whole life in the coaching space, Joel. And your name just got mentioned so many times. And so you're obviously good at what you do. And I'm excited to learn about how you created your business and what it has meant for your life and stuff as well. So welcome to the podcast.
Nice one. Yeah, let's get going.
But tell me, what made you make Codebreak?
What made me make Codebreak? So, there's the mile deep answer, and there's the...
You want to go deep? Don't give me the shallow stuff.
So, Codebreak's not my first business. That makes it sound like I've gone bust. I haven't. I had an interesting upbringing, not entrepreneurial at all, some pretty traumatic stuff going on. And when I got into employed life, although I was a really good, dedicated employee, I just had a hankering for an element of control. I wanted to be the employer, not the employee, and I would literally get anxiety about why aren't my ideas being used by these people, and that's like my early 20s, and it made me feel like really arrogant and sort of a bit of an outcast. Like, this isn't good. You need to do your steps first and learn your trade. And I'd worked in 2 or 3 different jobs in 3 quite different companies and felt the same way each time. I was like, no, my brain fires fast, and I'm going A, B, C, D, E, and you're still doing A to B. Like, what are we pissing around at? And it was me mental health issues, and started my own design agency called Squeak, which at the time, actually, to be honest, was called Salop Creative, which is a local name for Shropshire. Quickly learnt the error of my ways with that and rebranded as Squeak. Met a really good copywriter who ran an agency called Key 3 Media, and we sort of worked in tandem for a long time, about 7 years. And then it got so convoluted because we shared so many clients that we were like, we need to sort this out, and we merged the 2 businesses to create Codebreak. And then last month I bought him out. So 9 years after that, I bought him out. So that's kind of the quick version.
Yeah, just even in my experience, I think managing business partner relationships can be equally difficult, if not more difficult than a marriage, right?
I spent more time with him.
Yeah.
Spent a lot, but it's really weird. So July, I've seen him once for a coffee for an hour, and prior to that, he's the person I spent the most time with in life in the last 9 years.
Yeah, so interesting. It's so I totally empathize. And my business partner, Pete, came on the podcast last week, and it's like what I think we both resonated when we talked about this as well, is that navigating a business breakup or change in a conscious way that doesn't involve fighting is actually pretty good, serves you both, and shared a little bit about how you did that as well.
Yeah, exactly that. It's that, like, you and I were talking about how you get through that without kind of stones at each other, and like, it's not about getting down in the dirt. It's about what's best for everybody. I don't think many people manage to pull that off, but so far, touch wood, me and Andy have. I mean, phone rang just before we started recording, and that was Andy ringing to see how I'm getting on. So it's going to be a good sign.
Tell me more about business, and the reason I'm asking is because it sounded like from what you're sharing before, you had this real control and certainty, and even why I came to you was because actually I felt that I didn't have control or certainty when it came to my lead generation, my ads, like the way that people were coming into my business. Is that something that, like, a personal character trait you think that you've really built into the way that you work? It's like you want certainty in the way that leads come into the business. That's why you're world class at what you do.
I want more certainty than is healthy in all areas of my life. It's born out of a lot of trauma when I was younger. So I was born, my uncle committed suicide, and as a result of that, partly because he already expressed some of it, my dad had severe mental health issues. So Dad spent an awful lot of time in and out of hospital whilst I was growing up, and we had a very volatile, somewhat abusive household. And this is like, we're talking the 90s here, so this isn't where everybody talked about mental health and like we all like sat in a circle and chanted in the forest naked. It's not that. Like, it's very much like you can't tell the neighbours. Like, dad's been sectioned, they'll think we're all nutters if you tell them, and like awful, horrible stereotypes. And so I got bullied at school about it. Didn't understand. There was a lot of stigma. My own mental health was quite poor because of it. There was no certainty in our household whatsoever. Like, mum worked 4 jobs at one point to put food on the table for me and my brother. Sometimes we didn't know if mum was coming home because she might be at the hospital with dad. Something bad might have happened. It would be like, and I literally remember I'd do like meatballs out of a tin with rice for my little brother because that's what we could afford. And that's what I was capable of cooking at 12 and 13 years old. Just had like a lot of lack of certainty, and at the time I related that to a lack of money in the house, like couldn't afford stuff. As a grown-up, so to speak, a lot of that uncertainty was nothing to do with money. I've met poor people with a lot of certainty in their lives. It was more to do with instability. Then I grew up quite a strong person in terms of like, if something dramatic happens, I'm the guy you come to. But if you get a paper cut, don't come to me because I struggle with empathy for little things. And also, they're the things that topple me over too, like the accumulation of little things. The big stuff I'm brilliant with because I grew up in the trenches, right? Went to college, met someone at college who'd had quite a similar life to me. We became best friends and loads of time together. Loved her to bits. And she asked me to give her a ring at New Year one day, and I couldn't because I was with my girlfriend at the time, and my girlfriend was a little bit jealous. And like in hindsight, that's kind of fair enough. It wasn't nothing going on, but it's kind of fair enough. And when I did ring back, she didn't answer. And when we went back to college in the January, I found out she'd committed suicide that night.
Oh man.
And so that kind of ground, and I buggered off to university. So I kind of like under the carpet, went to university, tried to build myself as a person, lacked a male role model in my life because of what had gone on. I'd just lost my best friend. And I basically drifted through university by the only thing I was certain about was my own ability. So I would like study really hard, make sure I got the grades, like double down everything. But everything else was all to shit. I was gaining weight. I was drinking too much. I was partying too hard. I was probably not treating people as well as I should have been. I'd just lost all sense of certainty, even like almost like just like self and other than work. So that is long and short of where my like of comes from.
Isn't it funny? And like, there was Dax actually that said this to me years ago. Dax Moy, and he said, "From your darkest dark shines your lightest light." You know, and I just even like hearing you talk about this is like lack of certainty, need for money, want stability, and lo and behold, you're really good now at helping people create that in their businesses through the way that you
and their
do.
lives. That,
And
like,
like, you can just see it really clearly. It's like, it was funny because I felt like that when I was like, oh my gosh, I need some stability in my business. I need some predictability in my business. And I was like, okay, well, the only way I could probably get that is through ads and who's the guy, you know, the guy. That's so interesting. And you can see it's like that's from struggle, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing is like a lot of people come to us as a marketing company very rarely does someone come to us where it's like, pull the pin, this is an emergency. But they do come to us in a real state of uncertainty because they've probably grown their business organically to a place where they're comfortable, but they know that the next stage they're going to have to eat some shit. There's like, right, actually, like I've got to reinvest in this business. I've probably got to lower my lifestyle a little bit. And the annoying thing is I'm giving this prick the money to do it. And so it's like, I have to have an awful lot of empathy in that scenario and be like, well, believe me, I've been there. Like, I can help you through this. And it's never going to be as bad as you think.
What's interesting is like when I was a gym owner before I was a coach,
Yeah.
and like when I invested in the gym, I probably put 50 to 75 grand of my own money into the gym. And it was a real outlay because you get a physical, like bricks and mortar thing for your money. And what's I think very evident to me anyway in the coaching world, the consultancy world, is that people don't want to lay that kind of money out. They're very, very such a high margin startup, they get used to having not laying out big chunks of cash to kind of commit to things like that.
Yeah,
So that's interesting. Whereas I think because of my background with bricks and mortar, I'm really like, okay, well, if something costs,
yeah.
make it happen.
And like we're doing now as well, you'll meet people who would think nothing of spending 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 grand on something. But when you're like in a startup business scenario, everyone you meet is trying to do it all on the back of a fag packet. So it's not comparable to the kind of people I'm talking to. Like someone come in and says, I had one yesterday. They're like, "Oh, what's the average value of a customer to you over their lifetime?" And as well, 90 grand. Why are you spending £10 a day on Facebook ads? Like, does any sense? Like this, you're going to spend £3,600 on Facebook ads, and you're trying to acquire a 90 grand customer. You're miles away from where you want to be in terms of your mindset towards your marketing.
Yeah, I think so many, especially new entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, like PTs, that they don't think like that.
Yeah.
They really don't think like that. And but coming back to your story a little bit, at which point did you go, oh, actually, really good at this? Like this is like and helping people with this is my jam. Like, I'm really curious because like any point, like a point in the last couple of years, maybe, or when you start
So
the company.
I did design at university. Came into design industry in Manchester, did well. Like I had grades. I was like a respected designer in the space. Managed to work on some cool brands. And the recession hit, the 2008 recession. And design goes out the window. Then big companies do not spend money on big campaigns in recessions. So where I would have been designing stuff for Channel 4 or Anthony Joshua or Under Armour, like the brands I worked with at the time, they just pulled the plug. And freelance designers that are milling around agencies in Manchester don't have any work. And at the same time, my mum got unwell, and I thought, I'll move back to Shropshire. I'll come and take a safe job, make sure mum's all right, batten the hatches a little bit. And I worked for a conference business that were helping anyone that put on like big events. When you used to go to conferences back then, as soon as you walked through the door, someone would put like a lag on your shoulder, and when you open it, it'd be full of pens and notepads and leaflets, and the laptop bag would have like Colgate, Samsung or something on the front. And that's what we did. So I was like managing the projects and making sure they got manufactured properly, because like Samsung were very brand sensitive. So if the laptops came and the Samsung logo on the zip was the wrong way around, you'd have like a brand rejection on your hands. So that was the job I was doing. I didn't really enjoy it because it didn't test my metal. I was quality. And the recession was getting worse, so the conference industry was drying up too. I thought, I know what every budding graphic designer does at this point, and I trained to be an accountant. I was going to work for myself at that point. And I thought the one thing I don't know about is how businesses' books work, and this company will pay for my training as long as I give them my time back in return. So I thought that was a good move. People need accountants when there's recessions anyway. You need an accountant whether you've got money or you haven't. I have every minute of it. But now I can read a balance sheet, read a profit and loss statement. I can balance the books if you want me to. But on a very loose level, if you combine accountancy with the creativity of graphic design, you land on marketing.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I could see this piecing together.
Yeah. It that played into my hands is that when I then launched my own agency, just about coincided with when Meta Ads got launched.
Wow.
And I was
Great
like, I
timing.
can do this. Like, I need to do this because this is how my brain works. But I didn't know how to tell other people I knew how to do it. And I didn't know how to
Yeah.
when in Shropshire, and at the time I still only focused locally. The last thing traditional agricultural businesses and the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker want is like a 2-year-old walking through the door and telling them they need to do Facebook ads. This is like when people thought Facebook was just something kids did. It was not what it is
I think they
today.
some of them still think that, bro.
Well, yeah, everyone will bump into the people that are like, this is LinkedIn, it's not bloody Facebook. Or like, oh, go and do a silly dance on TikTok. And I'm like, do you realise that there was like $3 billion with sales on TikTok yesterday? It's like, yeah, like, but that all happened. Grew the business up quite successfully, created Codebreak with the merger that I talked about before, built Codebreak to a 7-figure business. And then the world transpired to have a massive lockdown. And we went from a 7-figure business to a 5-figure business in less than 2 weeks.
Oh my God, man. Oh,
It was like turned off the lights.
well,
And
I was in a gym, so I thought it was bad, but that sounds
it was brutal. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, what do we do? And also, like, if you're in the first 3 months of lockdown, people didn't realise, we all thought we were going to die. It, like, what didn't really matter where your beliefs lay about vaccines or what everyone talks about now. All we were seeing on TV was like people in the street dying, blankets being put over them, and like, oh my God, don't go outside. My wife works in a zoo, and when she came home, she was like showering in the sink downstairs and changing her clothes before she came and sat with me. Like, we were real serious at the start. And so when someone's ringing up and saying, I need to cancel, it's not like I could turn around and say, you're still under contract. They're like, well,
yeah,
they're dead next week. I'm cancelling.
yeah.
So
I had the same thing. I was like, people are members for like 7-8 years, and I'm like, Ben, I'm going to pause my subscription. I'm like, I get it. I know, it's like, it was really, I think, I also, how you people in that moment really mattered for the long game. Like, that's how I
yeah,
saw it. I kind of,
100%. Like that's where you had to be your best self, and
yeah,
probably not the mentality. Just be a good human.
yeah. Good
And
point. Oh, good point.
so,
Yeah.
like, that just sucked the life out of me. And I essentially spent the next 18 months working from home. We couldn't furlough the team because we'd merged too late to qualify for furlough. So, and we're a business, so everyone's got a separate skill set. It's not like we've got like, we can rip on every role. So I decided to sell the house to pay the team.
Whoa, my gosh. No way.
Yeah. So that obviously created an all of pressure on me. And I'm not like, my mental health was on the floor by this point. Like, it was.
It's like, that's really like, a part of me is like, you courageous bastard. The other part of me is like, holy shit, that is so much pressure. Like, where that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
So in the process of selling the house, and at the same time, myself and Andy, my business partner at the time, wrote a book. And we were like, we need some authority in the space. We can't just operate in Shropshire anymore. We do know what we're doing, but nobody knows we know what we're doing. If we're going, and a lot of people were going into the webinar space and online training, and that wasn't us. I didn't feel like that was necessarily going to be the right thing. So we wrote a book, and the book will Stay Hungry. It's the business motto. And it was a step-by-step guide on how to effectively scale a business using ads.
Wow. We'll put the link to that in the podcast notes, by the way. So if you're listening, Joel's going to give the podcast stuff afterwards, and I'll put it in there. So if you listen to this on Spotify or Apple, just head on into the show notes and you'll see the link for the book.
Oh, thank you. So, yeah, and we wrote this book. We had a bit of a template to follow. We didn't really know what we were doing. We knew we were going to self-publish, but we did use like a professional editor and like go about it properly. And that was to do like a typical launch. Now, people listening might not know, but a lot of people that tell you they're bestsellers on Amazon, they might have been bestsellers for 5 minutes. Not many of them were like genuinely organic sellers, or they might have been a bestseller in the like how to make grass green section of Amazon. It's like the least, and we were going to lean into that tactic, like cards on the table. Like, once you can tell people you're a bestseller, it elevates your position. Wrote the book. It was going out onto Amazon on a Saturday. The launch plan started on the Monday. And then the game was, over the next 2 weeks, to get as many reviews as we could from as many people as we knew, sell it as cheap as we could, get ourselves to bestseller status in one of the categories, screenshot it, jobs are good. But goes live Saturday night. Sunday morning, I'm sat on the sofa. My wife sat on the other sofa reading a magazine. I jumped onto Amazon, went to look at the digital marketing category, which is a legitimate category. There's big hitters in it. And we were number one.
No way. That's awesome, man.
And I was like, shit, we're actually number one. Like, I haven't this. Like, all we'd done was some podcasts prior to this and workshops. Like, we were particularly well known, and we'd got to number one in a category that people had actually heard of.
Quick question though.
Yeah.
What do you, I just so we don't glay over, because this could be, a lot of my audience are like coaches, consultants, speaking to do something similar. What do you think actually, other than luck, if you want to term it luck, I think that there would be one or two things that you like, actually, this was a real lever for us. What was it to get you there?
So we talked a lot about it on our podcast prior to it launching, and I don't think we'd perhaps given the podcast the attention it deserved in terms of like what the list was, and it was a lot higher than we thought it was.
Nice.
We'd been doing it for a while, and I'd also like for years, like way beyond it, and not really given it any credence because I wasn't call to action. I didn't really have a great elevator pitch. I was just, in my view, I was just making friends with as many influential people as I could.
Wow. Yeah.
And what happened was they all bought the book, or they all got their clients to buy the book, and it all the came home to roost. It was like,
yeah.
And so the book came out, and then the phone started ringing. Basically, it was like,
yeah, that's awesome.
Come and do a workshop for me. Can you speak on my stage? Could you handle my marketing? And I'm like, hang on, based Chicago. Well, I tell you that I've only ever dealt with people within a 20-mile radius of Shrewsbury before. Yeah, Chicago, let's go.
Same principle.
Yeah, same principles. And I'd got a book that demonstrated my principles. So it's like, well, if you've read the book and you still want to work with me. And then something else happened. I appreciate this is a long story.
I'm in. I'm sure everyone else is as well.
This is the bit where pretty much my entire family and friendship circle question my mental health, because house sales going through, a book's come out of nowhere, and then I bought an NFT, and I don't know if everyone listening will know what an NFT is, but it's a non-fungible token. It's a crypto asset. Essentially, like normally it's like people work in a digital form. It may or may not have some sort of facility behind it. So you might be the member of a club, you might be whatever. And in this case, it's called VFriends, and it's owned by Gary Vaynerchuk, who is like one of the most famous marketers in the world. And VFriend NFT, all I knew about it, I didn't really care about the artwork, didn't care about asset. All I knew about it was that when I got hold of this NFT, it gave me access to Gary Vaynerchuk's VCon conference for 3 years. So in my view, it was a ticket to his conference. And like it was first one was going to be hosted in an American football stadium. This was May of stepping out of Shropshire. And
this is a little step there.
But the drawing was like a horrible sketch of a turkey called every positive trait. So mine's called a tenacious turkey. And I basically had to walk down into my kitchen at home. I've just bought this drawing of a turkey to my wife. She turns around, like, what the f*** are you talking about? And she sees this squiggle on the screen. I was like, yeah, it was $3,000. And yeah, I'm going to be going to America in May, and the following May, and then the year after too. And she's like, well, we're going to pay for that. What are you talking about? And like, how is this going to benefit us at all? And I'm going to use this to meet Gary Vaynerchuk, because once I know Gary Vaynerchuk, that's going to change my life.
Wow.
And she thought I'd gone bananas. Most people did. And the following May, the following April, I got invited to London with 12 others to meet Gary, because we were the only holders in the UK. Well, there were, in truth, there were other holders, but they couldn't make it. So we sat in the room getting to know Gary. I gave him a Shrewsbury Town shirt so that he would remember me. And he said, why are you giving me this? And I said, well, you know who Ryan Reynolds is? And he's like, yeah, of course I know who Ryan Reynolds is. I said, well, he owns Wrexham, and they're our rivals, and it's my sworn duty to destroy him. And then I gave him a Shrewsbury Town shirt. And so when I went over to the States, to Minneapolis in May, he remembered me. And then I've been to Indianapolis since and spent time with him. and I go again next week to LA for the last one.
That proximity has really elevated you personally, your business. Like, tell me how, like, what you've from that proximity to such a prolific member of the marketing community.
There's the impact on my mindset. Like, I mean, I just said I don't quite think like other people do anyway. But these people, these millionaire types, they're thinking there's a whole different galaxy, and you spend time with them, and what you perceive as a risk, they just see as a test. And so, oh yeah, it's just a hurdle to overcome. Let's do it, see if it works or not. And
Yeah, wow.
that's really fun for me. And there's a few people from that circle. Like I've spent a lot of time with Jesse Itzler because of this.
He's
Obviously spent some
amazing.
time.
He's what heroes, man. He's so good.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've seen two talks, and both times I could have ran through a brick wall after watching the talk. It was just like this man. Like he could ask me to do anything right now, and I would. It's unreal, and it's really like changed the how I think. So that's that side. The other side is like the authority piece. If I do a workshop for a coach, and the slides, there's a picture of me with Gary V. Then there's a picture of me having dinner with Snoop Dogg. Then there's a picture of me on a basketball court with Ice Cube. It's very different to a picture of me sat in a field in Shropshire. I think that's like, whether you think like massive difference.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, like listening to your story, is that I do spend time around because, like, I have a lady called Hannah, and she was on the podcast, and just the way she just thinks in a whole different way of problems and challenges and stuff like that. Like, even when I watched her, deal with clients and think about things, what's the most important thing I think for even people listening in is like you just have to be in their presence for a bit, and you start to see that, and you're like, holy shit, like, yeah. And like even I was speaking to one of my buddies who actually he spends a lot on ads, and he said he went to a similar ads conference years ago, and people were spending what he would spend in 10 years in a day, and he was like, okay, I get it. How do I get to that? And that's where I think proximity is such an important part of your growth as an entrepreneur.
And I think, like, for me, I like a heavy British cynicism about me. Like, I'm a dry anyway. and so we see a lot of this, particularly like American entrepreneurs and stuff, and they're banging about how nice they are or how kind they are or how it's important to be a good person. A little bit, you're like, yeah, bollocks. Like, scenes, you are ruthless. And so when I met Gary, it was like, is this guy everything he says he is, or is it an incredible piece of branding? And he is what he says he is. He definitely is. I've seen how he behaves. He brought, like, who puts on the world's biggest mega conference and brings their parents on stage? I was like, this is epic. Like, this is, his parents are sat there and Snoop Dogg's waiting to come on. Like, what? Like, it's just real. There was like a real sense of integrity. And then obviously spoke to Jesse Itzler. He tells this story about trying to sell people membership to his Jets company he bought all the muffins from a coffee shop so that everyone at this conference had to come to him to get a muffin, and he'd give them a business card for his jet company. And I said, I Jesse in the DMs, I need to meet you at VCon. He was like, I'm on a really tight schedule. Sorry, dude. I was like, if you don't meet me, I'm going to throw muffins at you. And so he agreed to 5 minutes because it was just like knew that I'd paid attention. And so, but it just demonstrated that he was a real kind, nice person. And that was really good for me, was that I don't have to be a bastard to succeed. I can just like get around people doing this stuff for the right reasons.
Yeah, and I've actually felt as like I actually really working with people who have got incredible integrity, who are decent people. Like we met through Paul Mort's mastermind. Paul, I was one of Paul's first ever mentoring clients. I've come back to work with him again because he is just, he walks his talk. He is who he says he is,
including like the stuff he struggles with, right?
Yeah. Like transparent. Like I'm really like what Wuzzy Wug, what you see with what you get. What I'm hearing though, Joel, like really kind of is that you actually, like, your deep journey is going through like people thinking you're weird, different, crazy, but you've actually just trusted your intuition a lot. Like you've actually, I am doing this, buying this NFT, or don't know why, but I just know I need to do it. And I think that's something that the people that I've actually met and worked with as a client, or as I've worked alongside, or the reason that their business or they've grown exponentially is they've just started to listen to these crazy off-piste things that make them grow so quickly, so fast.
Yeah. And I would say, like, I've had a couple of moments like that, and they've always come during the biggest moment of tension in my life. So, like, obviously, selling your house, COVID lockdown.
So
That was
actually, can we just make sure we close this loop, right? You sold your house, and so you paid your staff, obviously, and then the business turned around. Like, tell us more about what happened.
Yeah. So I bought a smaller house, so I had somewhere to live. It's a nicer house, so whatever. We preached, so we wrote the book, and then we followed the guide, and we grew the business back up to 7 figures. That's the honest.
Yes, isn't it interesting? You just like you followed your own like steps, and like to me, and I don't know what you can speak to this in a second. It's like sometimes like just follow your own shit, man. Like just
Yeah. So followed our own advice, and I tell you what, like, I probably have more people doing that than I've ever upset before in business, because everyone thought we'd got big for our boots. We weren't looking after the local people anymore, that we weren't interested in being part of the Shrewsbury community. None of that was true. It's just what they perceived because we put ourselves out there. And that was a test of metal that I think every scaling business goes through, that you have to remember that people are going to like make assumptions of you based on their perceived version of your success. And like, even like, I own the business. Yes, the numbers look good, but like, I'm not like absolutely minted or like completely out of touch with people who can't afford their ads and stuff like that. That couldn't be further from the truth. Most of my money goes back into the business, and so that was a difference to be like, okay, I'm doing everything I said I would. I'm having the success I said I would, and yet, to be honest, I'm getting more slack than I've ever had.
It's a reverse indicator. It's like a feeling that tells you going in the right way. And I was like, when I left, I had a real following locally, and I moved to Dubai because I wanted to just explore life and have an adventure. And people made their own assumptions about what was going on for me as well. So I can that. What I'm really interested in is, like, you said did accountancy, you've got skill set in ads, and one of the things we talk about before the podcast is I was like, you had something really helpful for people, because I think so many people struggle with how much money to spend when it comes to advertising. I've done organically in my coaching business for so long. I'm like, I didn't have a finger in the air to what I should be allocating. So tell me more about what you created to help people make that first educated step in paid advertising, because I think that'll be really helpful.
So when I do live workshops or stage talks, I very often do this maths piece on the screen, and I go like full Rain Man. Like, people can't keep up with what I'm doing. It's a bit tactic. I'm not, it's part of the show. But the night at home, because I'll be talking about like, well, what do you want your turnover to be? What's the average lifetime value of a customer? How many leads do you get? How many inquiries do you get? How many sales do you get? And then from like those 5 numbers, I can figure a lot out. Like, I can figure out your acquisition cost. I can figure out your conversion rates. I can figure out how efficient your business is. I can figure out if you've got a nurture sequence or not, just from those 5 numbers.
Wow.
And there is like, bloody hell, how's he doing all of this? And it's laid out in front of them to see. And then I go, so just imagine if you could take the cost per lead down by 10%. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, if it's 10 quid and we reduce it to 9 quid, what impact would that have on the turnover? And they say, well, I don't know. And so I run the maths again with the lead cost at 9 quid instead of at 10 quid. And obviously they see a significant increase in turnover. And then my mic drop moment is the difference between what they said they wanted and what they could have is like miles bigger number than what my fees are. And
wow. I get it.
Like, see you later. Run to the back with your credit cards. I don't do that. Like,
it's called.
Yeah. Rich dad, poor dad. Sign up at the back. But like, it's not that. And I was like, oh, this is really effective. This converts really well. How do I replicate that exercise so people can do it themselves?
Nice.
And I was quite complicated spreadsheet, and was like, and made the boxes green that you need to fill in yourself.
Yeah.
and then just fact who did it, and they still filled it in wrong. Like
Mm.
you actually met two. These are people, but when it comes to like looking at this stuff, it's just not what makes them tick. And so the kettle boils, the doorbell goes, whatever, they get distracted. I was like, I need to build this in a smarter way. And so I find a platform that would let me put my spreadsheet in and then use AI to present it in a way that just asks people a really simple question, like, what would you like your turnover to be in the next 12 months? Right, answer that. Once you've answered that, okay, typically, how many inquiries do you convert into sales? Answer that. And you answer that. And then, okay, how many leads do you tend to get in a year, of which how many turn into inquiries? Okay, answer that. And you press submit and it churns out all the information you're ever going to need for you.
Wow.
And that's the tool. And I think there's just not enough marketing experts, gurus, for want of a better phrase, agencies willing to be transparent about the numbers at the front end so that
Yeah.
you can then plan what you're going to do with your campaign, because they know you're going to hold them accountable by those numbers.
Yeah, because even like when we're speaking, like within 2 minutes, I knew the numbers, and I loved that. I was like, okay, this is one, and really refreshing. Just a pause for anyone listening. If you're considering spending in ads and using a method like Goals to scale your business, what you can do is if you head on to the show notes, there's a link and you can click. You can join the 10x tribe, which is free. And if you go to this podcast in the section of the courses, and I'll put it in the is you can go and get that calculator. It's free, so they're gonna get it free, Joel.
Yeah.
They're gonna get it. You can get it for free. Use it. Honestly, like I'm like I didn't, it's gonna be so much. So I'll be using that as soon as I get off this call today.
I literally think every business owner should, and it's not like quite clearly that calculator is going to ask you to put your email address in at the end. I'm not like, I'm not hiding that fact. The reality is, it will give you just a real set of eyes on your numbers. If you're already working with an agency, you could take those figures into that agency and be like, why aren't we performing like this? Like,
yeah, because I in the past, even so, like I did spawn ads in my fitness business, and I remember we paid a company like $3,000 a month, and then I remember showing another business friend of mine. He's like, "Why are you paying an agency like $3,000? Your ad spend's like 500." He said it should like pay the agency. Like the agency should like 1,500 to tax, and then that you should be spending the rest on ads. And I was like, oh yeah, and I was like that. I didn't get that, but they were more of a design agency. So they're like literally. So yeah, I remember that experience, and like, but I didn't have I didn't understand that at the time. But it was a really important lesson. I was like, right, I should be spending more on my ads than I am on the agency.
Yeah, we've got like cards on the table. We've got clients like that now that like our low £1,500 a month, and they just haven't got more than £2,000 a month, but we can't lower our fee. And to be honest, I have to work harder for those clients because I need to squeeze as much out of that £500 as I can to make them get an ROI.
Yeah,
and they're the trickiest. So it's almost like, look, there is a cost of doing business, and there's certainly a cost of scaling a business. So
I think that what you're it's interesting your story though, but what you are actually investing in is certainty and consistency, and actually I think lead flow into your business just breathes life into your business every single month, and when you haven't got lead flow, it's like that's what.
We've got a client doing a webinar tonight. He teaches people how to invest in the stock market. We like working with him because he's the only person in that space we've come across that isn't a snake oil salesman. and he must be something wrong with the ads. This was yesterday. I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I've got 400 people signed up for my webinar tomorrow." Like, that's a record. And I was like, "Yeah, there's nothing with your ads. You're just not used to people doing their job properly."
Yeah, honestly, I have such a bad experience with agencies, like agencies, ad agencies, all sorts of agencies. I've had so many. I think, and that someone mentioned this the other day, is like the trust risk online. Like so many people are being burnt. But I think, like even just like how transparent you are, Joel. I think it really is refreshing as hell for me. Like I'm really. I've really conversation, man. I've really like the fact that you went deep and risked your house, man. That's like really inspirational. Not that I would ever do the same. I think that's like that's respect. I'm really do some work with you, and I'd love to, if you've this podcast and you've enjoyed what Joel shared, Feel free to check out his links in the comments. If you want to get the calculator, it's in the 10x Tribe. You can go and use it. It's free, and it'll help you ascertain what you need to be spending in your marketing. And I'm sure we'll have another conversation, my man. I really enjoyed this. Thanks for going a mile deep.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.